Greetings, Dr. Joseph Martin. Psychospiritual and psychopathic human tendencies. Live your inner Buddha Christ nature. Now, at first glance, it might seem really strange to put psychospiritual aspects of the most divine part of our human nature, which we all have and we all would like to exhibit and live every day, with the most evil demonic, yes, and I will say demonic side of the human species, which is the increasing prevalency in individuals and in cultures or societies for being psychopaths. And that would be the most evil demonic side of ourselves. Now, let's just compare and contrast these two, and I'll look at this through psychology, anthropology, and history, and then in terms of the 5 training practices of the Buddha, most relevant for our time today. So we can say that, the concatenation of different qualities in the human being, and okay, let's just take that word. Yes, the good side of the human species is a human being, and the bad side of the human species is the human doing. The psychospiritual people, the decent people, shall we say, and everyone is decent internally by nature, they're human beings of great love, and they are being and radiating. The psychopaths have no feelings and no emotions, and are completely psychologically and spiritually shut down or frozen, so they are human doings themselves, and they treat others as human objects. Now, this video is not about blaming or division or partisanship or separating the good from the bad, the wheat from the chaff, so to speak. No, we all, every single one of us, have this inside ourselves. And that's the whole purpose of this video, to encourage you to do as I have in my life, to look inside and find your inner Hitler, your inner psychopath. And these are shadow tendencies, as Dr. Carl Jung would have us know and experience, that we must bring to the light of day, transmute and transform their evil tendencies and natures into something alchemically and spiritually, transcendentally positive and powerful, where hatred turns to love, and greed turns to selflessness, and evil turns to every moment being benevolent, and revenge turns to compassion and forgiveness. You can and you must do this within yourself. It does no good to say another group or individual is the axis of evil. We all have to take self-responsibility to make sure that we own this part of ourselves and we have it in our charge, and we are transmuting and transforming it every moment, so that at the time when we want to have road rage or revenge against somebody, a boss, a coworker, a relative even, we don't do that. We take a breath, we take a moment, and we decide to change and self-actualize and self-realize that we can choose the higher road. We can be the love we want to see in the world. We need to be the love. Because no one else will do it for us. We need to be the love. So you see, there is a really interesting kind of combination here going on between psychospiritual side of human nature and the psychopathic side of human nature. Well, when I was a young man and I was working in a psychiatric hospital in Ontario, in Canada, in my early 20s and mid-20s, I realized that there were a lot of sociopaths coming in. And one could call it, as it is in the DSM-4 and DSM-5, it's an obsessive-compulsive mental illness, a neuroses, and actually a psychosis. The psychotic part of it is that you're totally annulling or freezing your soul and freezing your consciousness and your conscience, actually. Viktor Frankl, as you've seen my video, said that, Hitler and the Nazis, they did have a conscience. It's just that they were anesthetizing their conscience and didn't listen to it. So psychopaths, our own psychopathic nature, we have a conscience inside, which is the divine soul that we are, that tells it that what we're about to say or what we are thinking is wrong. It's morally, ethically, and spiritually wrong. And so we do need to make the choices to stop lying to ourselves and always be truth speakers, truth revealers, truth storytellers. Be authentic instead of living a lying, cheating life. Now, of course, there's tendencies in every one of us. And, interesting, in this psychiatric hospital, I realized that those sociopaths and psychopaths coming in, they came from very troubled families, maybe absent fathers or absent mothers, alcoholic and destructive fathers or mothers. They were beaten, these children were beaten, they were sexually abused, they were verbally and emotionally and physically hit or abused and challenged, spiritually abused. They weren't able to have their soul and spirit awaken inside themselves. And these sociopaths and psychopaths that I knew, who were in their ages of 20s and 30s, they were always routinely brought into the hospital by the police or other people. And of course, we know that psychopaths and sociopaths are destructive. They kill other people, they murder them. And I'm not just talking about the criminal element in the world, all the different kinds of cultural mafia around, but I also mean the corporate heads who, there's a great book called Snakes in Skins, the corporate executives who have no feelings or morality around destroying land or people or cultures or languages or resources or bombing people. And I'm saying the bombing part is in a symbolic sense. Colonialism and capitalism of the last 500 years on the planet, in a way, is a psychopathic societal issue, which has led increasingly anthropologically to the fact that we now have more resistance to this psychopathic colonization, which has been victimizing peoples, not just First Nations, but peoples of all the continents of the world, to the point where Al-Quaeda and this group, the ISIS, so-called, in Syria and Iraq, is now taking over and is killing the Kurds and killing other fellow Sunni Arabs and creating a huge issue worldwide and so on. So we can see historically that it wasn't just Napoleon, Hitler, Mussolini, Stalin, and then Mao. Now it's become groups all over the world, not just individuals. And these are growing groups of increasingly violent people who are completely psychopathic and butchering their fellow peoples and beheading people from other nations. So there's no doubt that this is a very, very important issue to look at, historically, cross-culturally, and obviously psychologically and spiritually. The only answer is Gandhi and Tolstoy would have it, and you just maybe watched my video I just finished a few minutes ago, is that the only answer to violent oppression and revolution on the planet is non-violent confrontation through peaceful means of strikes and walks, such as Martin Luther King's walk to Washington to gain civil rights. And these methods of peaceful, conciliatory, gathering together all the different people, which is the way of our peacemaker, the Gandhi. It is the model for the future. The Great Law of Peace by the peacemaker, the Gandhi, the Mohawk, you want to watch those 2 videos I've done on this, is the political, social, economic, spiritual model for the future, because when we, or let's just start with without it, this whole world will end in one big holocaust of violence, as Viktor Frankl predicted, that every culture will be having a holocaust of its own and one great international holocaust. The only way to prevent this is to take what I'm saying and suggesting seriously, do your inner work, and get in charge of your own inner autocrat, your own inner um, dictator, if you like, and then make sure that you're always in charge of that. You know, the great Charlie Chaplin movie, The Great Dictator, when he was making fun of Hitler and so on, but he did it in a lighthearted way, and also in a way whereby we can look inside ourselves and find that comedic, laughable way to take charge of our own self. Going back to working in the hospital with these sociopaths and psychopaths, and they were, some of them, were there for various reasons. Some of them were bankers, some of them were criminals, some were doing break and entering and so on. And of course, we want to understand that, as much as we have compassion for these people, they were morally on the wrong side of the spiritual and the civil laws. Nevertheless, this is the point I want to make. All sociopaths and psychopaths eventually end up self-destructing. Because when you don't bring the good inside you, your soul, your divinity, out into the world and live it as a good, decent person, kind, respectful person, that part that's hidden inside, it will remain frozen inside, and the only part will be the destruction that you're meting out on other people. But of course, whatever you give to others will be done to you, and by yourself, it's your own choice. All these people ended up killing themselves one way or another, either through killing themselves through suicide, through drugs and alcohol and addictions, through risky behaviors, through car accidents and many other means, or eventually through serious illnesses, not just mental, but physical and emotional illnesses that took their life early on. And by this I mean cancers. So, to be a psychopath is to be emotionless and to be anesthetizing your soul and your own inner divinity. Now, of course, in the longer range of things, over many, many thousands of years, and of course, as we would have it in the traditions of the true spiritual science of rebirth, reincarnation, one will learn these lessons because karma is an immutable law of spiritual science, cause and effect. And whatever you mete out in one life will be done to you in the next. And eventually, over thousands of lives, maybe you will learn that your truest and highest nature is as a divine soul united with the spirit and the light of the source of the universe, of the creator. And she is blessing you and calling you back to always be at one with the goodness in your heart and your mind. So this is important to look at all these things. I wanted to share this with you because the solution then is something that every great spiritual teacher has said, and of course they all say the same thing, more or less. They're all friends in the universe, as I've said before. Buddha, Lao Tzu, Jesus, Moses, Zoroaster, Muhammad, peace be upon him, bless his holy name, and all these other great masters, and the women as well, Rabia, Sharada Devi, Ramakrishna, Vivekananda, Guru Nanak, and on and on and on. Mother Mary, Mary Magdalene, and all the other great beings that have brought their light to show us the way. I'm just going to share with you the 5 trainings or the precepts of the Buddha that are very popular these days and made popular by the great Buddhist teacher Thich Nhat Hanh. And here we have the 5 mindfulness trainings for psychopaths. That was my addition to it. If we all are psychopathic by nature, we have the evil demonic side in us. So we are the only ones who can and need to take charge and transform and transmute this into goodness. And it's always done by choice every moment. And the more you work on your inner spiritual path day by day through meditation, yoga, and through this mindfulness, focusing on the goodness within you and always choosing the right path, the right dharma, and in being in service and love and support of everyone else in a selfless way, then you will grow to live and be the love you are. Here are the 5 mindfulness trainings of the Buddha. Shakyamuni Buddha, the most recent Buddha. 1. I am aware that all suffering is caused by destruction of life. Meaning that the destruction of life and killing or hurting other people, bombing them as we have in Israel and the Gaza Strip today, or in the Ukraine between Ukrainians and Russians, the bombing and killing of innocent people or people you hate is the cause of all suffering. The suffering of those who mete out this victimization, and obviously the suffering of those who have been hurt and bombed or killed or maimed, including all the innocent children. Number 2, I am aware that suffering is caused by exploitation, social injustice, stealing, and oppression. Well, we can say that the history of the whole world has been like this, not just the capitalism or the communism or the socialism. It's embedded in human nature, and it will only be eradicated by individuals who do their own inner work, one person at a time. Now, so if you're really concerned about social injustice and oppression of women, of gays, of the colored people, of ethnic minorities, of Native women, all of which I am very, very, very concerned about the social injustices and the murders of a lot of these people in different countries of the world, including in Canada, then I would suggest, as well as taking action and being socially aware and awake, and involving yourself in nonviolent, peaceful protests and action taking, like letters written to people in charge, like the police, the military, and the government agencies and the social agencies, making it aware by speaking up to people about the oppression of all these groups I've just mentioned. But the key is to change the oppression of yourself, your ego and your inner psychopathic part that wants to oppress your soul. And that is the case for many of us. The part that wants to stop us from having meaning and purpose in life. All this kind of injustice that we do with ourselves, when we stop it and turn around and become united with our soul, then we will be that great magnetic love and change that we want to see in the world. Number 3, I'm aware that all suffering is caused by sexual misconduct, sexual abuse. And herein is another thing. We need to see this as the destruction of our inner feminine. Whether you're a man or a woman, gay or straight, it's irrelevant. The feminine side is our greatest side because that's the good side. That's the soul. That's the soul that connects to the spirit. It's the relational side that knows how to communicate and connect authentically with source, with spirit, and with the divinity within ourselves. And this part, this feminine side, is the part that needs to be brought forward inside you and authentically lived and harmoniously balanced and integrated with the logic of the mind in this over-masculinized world and educational system. And here, I just want to point out that the abuse doesn't happen only with women, but it happens with men. And I mean sexual abuse, as you know, my story. This is part of my story, which I have healed. I'm very powerfully confident and thankful that I was able to do that. It's given me the strength and the confidence to speak out with you now here about all these issues. And you too can heal any of the sexual abuse that was happening for you in your childhood. And as you heal, then you will realize that you'll be able to champion those women, particularly the Native women in our country, in Canada. There's over 1,300 that have been killed indiscriminately over the last few decades, or any of the children that have been abducted and abused. For the whole goal of this 3rd training, as you become mindful of it and do your psychospiritual healing for yourself as an individual, you will realize that you not only need to protect your inner child or your inner children, which I deem to be one of the greatest psychotherapeutic techniques and necessary processes that you do need to engage upon continuously until the very last breath. You champion your own inner child and children. And when you do, then you'll be able to protect all the children on the planet, black, white, red, yellow, native. This is very important. Obviously, I'm sure some of you are very much reflective as I'm sharing this with you. The fourth mindfulness training of the Buddha is being that I am aware that suffering is caused by unmindful speech and unmindful acts, and the inability to truly listen from the heart to the heart of another person. And it's 90% of what you need to communicate or listen to is nonverbal, and you're always listening for what is not being said. It's the heartfelt emotions that are buried underneath the words and the physical responses. That's what you need to listen to. Be respectful, compassionate, and kind, and caring about this person as a real brother or sister for yourself. And not to give out unmindful words, angry words, revengeful words, hurtful words when you know that you don't need to say it. And in the end, your conscience will make you feel guilty, and you need to forgive yourselves for what you've said, and you need to forgive yourselves for the guilt that you now carry from all these unmindful thoughts, feelings, and actions. And the fifth final mindfulness training of the Buddha is, I am aware that suffering is caused by unmindful consuming of alcohol, drugs, and other food substances that are not good for me. And it's not just the consumption of physical things, it's the consumption of bad, negative thoughts, letting yourself follow through with uncontrolled anger, or sadness, or guilt, or fear, or dread, or terror. You can stop yourself. If you want to be happy, as Tolstoy said, just be happy. It's a choice. But you do need to work on these buried emotions as well. You know, addictions, as Carl Jung said, are really a substitute, a destructive substitute for the real connection to spirit. So the spirits of alcohol or the drugs that we take in, and yes, it's not just the spirits of the actual liquid, but it's a demonic spirit, I could say, in a psychological, psychospiritual way, of some entity in these substances that does want to kill us. And addictions do kill the spirit, the soul, the mind, the emotions, the heart, and eventually the body, as you all well know. And from my over 40 years of being a psychologist and psychotherapist, I can assure you that addictions only cause disintegration and death to the one who is addicted. Yes, it has a residual effect of disturbing and destroying lives and families around, whether it's a gambling addiction, a sexual addiction, or sugar addiction, assault addiction, whatever kind of addiction it may be, and there's so many of them, aren't there, that you can get charged and be in charge of all this through this mindfulness training of the Buddha. So I'm not only outlining what the challenge and the issue and the reality is of our human nature, the two sides of our human nature, I'm giving you some suggestions and training procedures and techniques from a wise man who attained full liberation. That would be Shakyamuni Gautama Buddha. And there are many Buddhists on the planet and non-Buddhists who use these mindfulness trainings now, and they go to retreats, and there are some in your country, I'm sure, a mindfulness retreat where you learn to train in these focusing techniques of the inner truth, and let that the divinity within you, which is your true nature, your soul connected to spirit in the light of the source of God, Goddess, and all that is in the universes, let that be coming forth and transmute and bring the light to the darkness, just as the dawning of the new day eventually brings light to all of the world and nature around us as the sun rises in the east, so this light of your soul, your highest good divine nature, will lighten all the darkness and eventually burn off with spiritual purification. This light, this goodness that you are, will burn off all the negativity and the negative, revengeful, sociopathic, psychopathic tendencies, and you will find yourself a wholesome, whole, complete, integrated, unified spiritual being of great love, great light, great joy, great peace, great beauty, and great laughter. Dr. Joseph Martin, good luck on your journey. Om Namah Shivaya. Namaste. I see the great love and light in you. Be the love you are and the light you are.